You're listening to the God Life Culture Podcast, where faith
and what's trending collide. Welcome to the latest episode of the God Life Culture Podcast. This is Eddie.
What's up, everyone? This is Miguel, and you are listening to the God Life Culture Podcast. If this is your first time listening, we just want to say welcome to our podcast. We hope that you are going to enjoy today's conversation, that you will be encouraged, uplifted. If you are a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back, right, to check out our podcast and listen to our episodes. And we pray that today, like every other week when you listen, you are motivated and inspired, and just our conversation builds you up. So definitely thank you for tuning in to another week and another episode. Eddie, how we feeling? Anything new happening?
Feeling great. I mean, nothing new that I can talk about.
We were talking about
a lot
the
of
weather.
super secret projects that I imagine. Have you seen those podcasts, like when they interview people and they're like, "Oh, do you have anything coming on?" They're like, "Oh, we're working like a super secret project. We don't have the clearance to talk about that yet."
It's like, why bring it up?
Yeah, I have a couple super secret. No, I don't. But it's been good. I think one of the things that it was funny. My wife brought this up to me Friday night. We were driving back from a play date. We went. It was a play date for the kids, but it wound up being a play date for the adults because the parrots, both sets of parrots, wet. So you kind of have to play date with the parents as well. But it was we had an awesome time, really fun time. We wound up spending it was like almost 6 hours together. So that's a lot, but it's good because it didn't feel that way. But one of the things that she was asking me about was, she was like, "Do you feel like you're being a lot more social?" I was like, I don't know, especially with like the certain changes I've been making in my life in the last year and stuff like that. She's like, "Do you think that has awakened in you to be more social with people?" And I was like, I don't think that it's awakened in me to be more social. I think that I have been put in positions to be more social. So, whether it is that, my kid wants to start having play dates with other people, whether it is the whole gym situation has put me in a place where I'm meeting new people that are very friendly. So it kind of forces you to be friendly back, to not be rude. You're being put in positions to be a lot more social with people. So that's been like an interesting journey. I think that I've mentioned times before in the podcast that although I come off as extroverted, I'm very introverted. I'm cool with just sitting in a corner and I'm like fine, But it's been fun.
And sometimes that's what it takes for you to be in position to have to do something in order to grow in that area, or just not even sometimes grow, but just realize what was always there. Maybe that wasn't tapped into, or just you didn't, really like put out. But yeah, I can definitely see that, being put in positions where certain sides of you are coming out that normally wouldn't, right? Or characteristics of yourself. And, I think, when you enter your 30s, I feel like that's something that happens, right? Like you kind of, you get like a different level of confidence, but also because of just life things that begin to happen, you have to tap into different sides of yourself and different, just characteristics of yourself in order to confront these changes. And a lot of times it's nothing negative, right? It's just like you said, you have kids that are getting older and now wanting to have play dates, and the parents are involved now. So you're being put in these, different circumstances that is good, right? For your overall like growth as just a human. So
and I also think it's important that regardless of your own preconceived notions or opinions about who you are socially, to not let those opportunities fall to the wayside. Just because I'm fine with being a homebody, for example, doesn't mean that if my sons or my wife is like, "Oh, let's go hang out with these people, like we never met them before, but let's try to set something up," I can't be like, "I know that's not my thing, I don't really like that," or whatever, even though it's not my thing and I don't like that. You kind of still got to be like, you know what, let's give it a go. And you got to like that's what coming out of your comfort zone looks like, which is that although you would prefer not to, just because of your own your own preferences, a lot of times you got to push past those preferences because you don't know the relationships you could build. You don't know the friendships that you could establish, which is a topic we're going to talk about today. And, you know, at the end of the day, nothing has to come out of it. You know, I remember we went last year for my wife's and I anniversary. We went to this cooking competition thing in the city, and we got sat down next to another couple that were great. They were so fun. We had a great time. We spoke the whole night, laughing, joking around. I've never seen those people ever again. You know, it was great for the moment. We had fun, and sometimes those relationships don't become anything else, and then sometimes they actually do. And then you also have the whole spiritual side of stuff, which is that when, you know, God opens up a way for you to be connected to someone, you know, there is spiritual purpose in that as well. Not always is God is sending you on a mission, but you never know through that relationship, through that, through those connections that are built down the line. You never know how you can be of a blessing to those people and vice versa as well.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think one more point to that is I think a lot of times because we may express these things or express, and, you know, you've said before, like, you know, you're more introverted, although you may seem extroverted, or, you know, you're not as social as maybe other people are, and all of those things, it can be easy for the people around you to then bring that up in certain instances where it's like, oh, I was going to invite you, but I know like you don't like that stuff, or like I know like you're not social, or I know you don't like meeting new people, and they can do that with anything, right? And I think it's important also to, when that happens, to make sure you explain yourself and also let people know, like, just don't let other people to define you and identify you as that, because then that further keeps you, right, feeling you know, introverted, or feeling like you want to be alone. And even though, like you said, it may be the truth, right, when other people begin to like declare those things and say those things, again, it further just confirms and affirms what you feel. Because in honesty, not all of those feelings that we feel at times are good for us. So it's like, you know, you may be affirming something in my life that even though I say it and even though I may portray it, it's not good for me. So to hear you say, you know, we were going to tell you about this, but we know how you are. We know you don't like this, or we know that, you know, you're not that type of person, or, you know, they just affirm those characteristics in you that may not be as good. You know, it doesn't take you out of that, right? So I think just making sure that you don't allow other people to affirm the things in your life that may not be good qualities or good characteristics of what you possess, and making sure you kind of, you know, get out of that.
Yeah, and I think it's a tricky situation to be in, because I would say that for a lot of people, I don't want to give it as a blanket statement, but a lot of people find themselves, me, myself, as reverting to being introverted and being on your own and just like whatever, and making peace with that because of bad experiences that you've had, right? So it's kind of, if you want to make it more bigger than what it is, it's trauma based. You know, you at a time try to be extroverted, you at a time try to connect with people, you at a time with being yourself with people, and then that kind of backfired, or the people didn't reciprocate the same energy, or it caused it mess, or caused drama, whatever. And a lot of times, to avoid having to deal with with building a bridge that then has to get taken down, is kind of like, I would just rather I'll stay here, tranquilito, no issues, no problems with anyone. But I think what you said was very important, which is, you know, be clear with people, which is that if you want to invite me to stuff, give me the opportunity to say no. Let me be the one to be like, no, it's okay, you know, go, because you never know. Maybe that day I'm feeling great and I'm like, yeah, let's go do this. But let's just jump into the topic, because I feel like we keep teetering around it.
Yeah, I mean, last week or a few weeks ago, actually, we went out to eat, right, to this barbecue restaurant with our wives, and it was really good, by the way. It was your suggestion. You had been there 37 times. But it was really good, and the ribs were great. Mouth-watering, right? There were 3 types of ribs. I don't remember what the first one was, but it was like the biggest and the toughest, but with the most flavor. So it's like, even though you couldn't bite off the meat from the rib as it was like easily, it was just like just having it there anyway. You were getting the flavor, even though you couldn't get all the meat, and it was still good. So you know, that was good. But anyway, aside from that, we went out to eat, and on our way back, or I think it was back from the restaurant from eating, we always get into deep topics, right? And the topic of forgiveness came up, right? But specifically, we were just talking about how sometimes when you meet new people, or, you know, you have the opportunity to like hang out with new people and possibility of developing new friendships with individuals, how sometimes, like you said, the trauma or things that you've been through in the past with other friendships and relationships in your life kind of hinder you or cause hesitation for you to actually engage with new individuals to create new friendships, right? And that conversation kind of, led us to talking about forgiveness and what forgiveness looks like, right? How at times, because of things that we've been through in our past with other friends or relationships, let's say, we say we forgave them. We maybe had a moment of closure, right? Maybe we didn't, but it's kind of stuck in our past. But even though we've forgiven those individuals, we still experience kind of the side effects and repercussions of what happened, right? So it's like, did we truly forgive even though we feel these feelings? Did we truly let go of what happened? What's the whole forgive and forget thing? Is it even possible to forgive someone and forget what they've done? Are we supposed to forget, not forget? What do we do as Christians? It's a loaded topic, right? Because again, forgiveness, outside of, Christianity, for just maybe an individual who has no, faith background, looks very different than what God tells us in his word, and how to deal with forgiveness. So it was a very in-depth topic that we, got into, and we were like, we need to talk about this on the podcast, and very relevant to what you were saying about, sometimes you hold yourself back because of previous experiences that you've had. And those previous experiences kind of hinder you from experiencing something new and something great that a lot of times is not going to end in hurt. It's not going to end in pain, but because of our own traumas and experiences, we project that. And we end up self-sabotaging a friendship, self-sabotaging possibility for something new. And sometimes it doesn't have to be friendship. It can just be with taking a risk in your life and doing something new.
Yeah, and I think that, from my perspective, when the topic came up and we were speaking, one of the things that I brought up was a reel I had watched where there were two individuals from a podcast that she was having a venting moment about forgiveness and about how crazy it is sometimes where we find ourselves in situations where, someone hurt you, something happened, whatever it was, there was a breakup in a relationship. And, you pray to God and you're like, God, I need you to take control of the situation and I need you to help me and I need you to fight on my behalf, Lord, and all this like stuff that we throw at God to do for us in those moments of hurt. And she was saying how there are times where we make those big prayers and we do these big gestures, wanting God to vindicate us because of that hurt. But that individual had their moment with God and, asked God for forgiveness and is on their own journey of forgiveness, but never returned back to you. And you're left there still fighting like, Lord, are you fighting my battle? Whatever. And how funny it is that sometimes we then get angry with God. Because it's like, Lord, I get that you forgave them, but, where is my moment for me to be vindicated and that they were wrong and that I was right and all this stuff. And, those moments, I think, of super rare to happen. There are experiences and moments where people do come back to you and they ask you for forgiveness, and there's like a whole there is a restoration in a way that happens, whether or not the relationship goes back to how it was or whether or not that relationship has changed forever. But at the end of the day, there is a closure that happens in those moments, but not everybody gets that. And I think that that's a really tough pill to swallow, that we have to understand that God's relationship with everyone is individual, and you're not always going to get the ending to a story or a chapter in your life the way that you want it to happen. And when I was speaking about, when I was giving my take on this, the whole thing with forgiveness and building friendships and stuff like that, I just think that for me, it's super tough because I already come into the scenario being very selective with the individuals who I let in to my circle. And that's trauma-based. I don't like saying trauma-based. It's experience-based. I'm going to say experience-based. It's experience-based because I understand that my personality and my expectations for people aren't always understood. And because of that, instead of continually putting myself in positions of people, it's kind of like, okay, you get me. Now you could be part of the crew. Because I have standards when it comes to friendships. I try my best to be there for you. I try my best to not make conversations that we're having where you're having a venting moment, make it about me. If it's your moment, I want to be supportive. I want to be there for you. You share interests with me. I pick up those interests just so that we could dialogue about those things. I'm very particular about the way that I handle my friendships. But on top of that, I'm always very key on communication. If I see something's up, you're feeling down, you're feeling sad, I'll check in on you. If I see that you're someone who is starting to act weird or different, it could have nothing to do with me. It's just like situations you're in or whatever. I like to check in on you. How are you doing? Are you okay? Are we okay? I not that I'm having those conversations every day, but if something is off, I'm the type of person that likes to communicate and have those conversations with you. So when you are an individual that puts in that time and that energy and that effort in building that bridge of friendship, that build of communication, that build of trust, that build of love, because that's really what it comes down to as well. And then you see how people disregard that, or it's so easy to grab a machete and start hacking at that bridge for whatever reason and don't want to communicate why they're acting that way. For me, it becomes very tough. That's something where that holds me back from, do I want to go through the hassle, the blood, sweat, and tears of building a relationship with someone who may potentially turn around 3, 6, 8, 10 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, and completely demolish the bridge that I just built with them?
Yeah, it's tough. And I think that, even outside of friendships or relationships, whenever there's a bad experience, that bad experience stays kind of grounded and ingrained in your mind, where the next time you go to do that thing or experience that thing, that experience comes up, right? So, it's like the last time I traveled, I got lost. My plane, was experiencing issues. We missed our flight. I didn't pack this. I forgot this. So now it's like, I never want to travel again, right? Like I remember talking to someone who went to Disney for the first time and they just had a horrible experience. Like everything that could go wrong went wrong. It was like super hot and then it rained. Everything got rained out. Rides were closed. So to them, they're like, I am never going to Disney again, right? Where it's like other people can go and it's like they have the most amazing time. But again, their experience wasn't the best. So now they kind of closed off Florida, Disney, amusement parks. We're not doing any of that. So because of one bad experience, right, you kind of just neglect now everything else that could come in the future, that it's like, it's not going to be a horrible experience the way you think. We do that with friends, right? And friendships. So I definitely agree with that idea that, it's hard to let people in when you've been hurt. It's hard to, sometimes we let people in, but we don't give them access, or give them all of our vulnerability and all of that, where then sometimes people may pick up on that and may ask, like, you don't really mention about you, or you don't really talk about your things, or like, what's on your mind. But again, like you said, we can call it trauma-based, experience-based, but also fear-based, right? Where it's like, I have the fear that this friendship will die out, that something will happen, something will go wrong, and I'll be left alone again, or I'll be left with the hurt again. So as opposed to putting myself in this position to be hurt, right, I'm just not going to do it at all. And it's easier to do that at times. And we'll complain at times about not having people, not having friends, and not be, right? But we do it to ourselves. And, I've been guilty of that so many times. And then there are moments where I have to tell myself, I can't, it's, I don't like, and I hear this often with individuals that have been through this, like, I don't have friends, right? Like, I don't have friends, or, they'll say things like, oh, that's why I don't get close to no one. It's like, in reality, you need people in your life. You need friends. You need people around you. And I think especially as Christians, we can use this as a crutch, that as long as I have God, I have everything. And, God completes me. He fulfills me. He satisfies me. So I don't need friends. I don't need relationships outside of my relationship with God. And that's not true, right? We look even biblically, God says it's not good for man to be alone. We see even Jesus choosing 12 disciples. One of them betrayed him. He knew that from the beginning, yet still included him a part of his 12, sat with him, spoke with him, all of those different things, right? Yet we, right, will sometimes just look at it like we don't need anyone. It's like when Jesus, when he was on earth, chose 12 disciples and needed their assistance to carry things out and do things on the earth. You need people, you know? And again, we let what we've experienced take hold of us to the point that now we're not enjoying potential blessings that God has in store for us, right? Potential connections and relationships with people that God has in store for us. I wouldn't say that if we experience that, right, like the hesitation because of past hurts, that it's not that we haven't forgiven those individuals. You know, I think it is possible to forgive people and what they've done to you, but still the feeling and the emotion kind of that, you know, you are dealing with is something separate. You know, so it's like, I feel like a part of the forgiveness process is forgiving the individual, right? Whether it is that you have the opportunity to actually speak to them face to face, you know, a letter, whatever it is, but you have a conversation where you can forgive them, where at times forgiveness can happen that way. And at times you have to forgive someone from afar because you don't have access to them. Whatever it is, you forgive an individual. But now I think the work continues because now it's like, you know, what damage was done as a result of this conflict, right? What am I now having to experience? What am I now having to overcome in my life and truly work on those things?
True.
Because I think we just go through the experiences, we go through these little traumas, we go through these friendship breakups, relationship breakups, situations, right? We forgive people. We have a moment where we say we let it go, but now although we forgive them, we don't deal with the consequences of what happens or the repercussions. And that's what we drag into our next situation, right? So then there may be individuals that then don't have a problem entering new friendships, but they're bringing all that baggage with them to the point that their friend is like, dude, I can't be friends with you if this is how you're going to be, right? Every little thing you're kind of like thinking I'm going to like abandon you, leave you, I'm talking about you, or you're trying to control and manipulate our friendship because of your fears and your traumas. So in essence, again, you begin to self-sabotage these friendships in your life because not that you didn't forgive the people before, but you didn't deal with the repercussions and the effects of what they did to you, you know? So forgiveness is very important, but I think it doesn't just stop with forgiving the person. Forgiveness is something you have to walk out, right? You have to walk out forgiveness. And sometimes a part of walking out forgiveness is processing what happened to you as a result of that issue. Who are you now? Because in reality, at times, you know, you can go back to, I wasn't always like this, right? So I wasn't always introverted, or I wasn't always hesitant to, you know, have friends. I wasn't always hesitant to take risks in my life. But because of that experience, that slowly started chipping away at my confidence. It started chipping away at my acceptance of new individuals and new people in my life and embracing them. So it's like we allow these experiences to chip away at our characteristics and qualities that are really good. And then it's like we bring the worst part of ourselves to these other friendships or other relationships.
It's true. And I think that part of that healing process and that growth that has to happen is you taking accountability for your role in the situation, right?
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is that it's quite possible that the other person was wrong. You weren't technically wrong, but were there things that you could have done differently? Was there reactions you could have given differently? Were there different ways that you could have communicated certain things? Because those are experiences that you want to learn from as well, so that you don't repeat that.
Yeah.
Because what happens is that even though that person was wrong, you took an action that now they're using as the excuse as to why the friendship has been broken. You know, and an example that I can give for that is, you know, I had an experience a couple of years ago where I was really baffled, bamboozled, blindsided by the way that a person that I considered a friend did something. And it just boggled my mind, and I was just so upset about the situation. And it was a very layered situation that what I decided to do was just cut the person off. That's it. You know what? You know, if that's what you feel, if that, whatever, deuces, right? And did I have the right for my peace of mind, my mental health, which is an excuse that a lot of people use, whether or not that's true, or whatever, to be like, I should just cut that person off that way? I could have, but looking back at the situation, even though I was the one that was offended, I was the one that was done wrong against, even though I was the one that I felt played to my face, I should have handled that differently. I should have went up to the person and been like, oh, you know what? Like, I heard you did this or whatever. And, you know, it really was out of character for you. And I don't understand why you did that instead of coming to me. Like, that conversation should have happened. Right. So luckily, a conversation did happen. That, you know, the situation was amended and resolved. But at the end of the day, it took a year for that conversation to happen. So it was a year that was wasted where I was completely icing out an individual because I was hurt by what they did when I should have just, you know, bit the bullet. And in that moment, I also knew that I was being immature about the situation because I was tired of always having to bite the bullet. Tired of always having to be the one to go up to the people. Tired of always having to be the one to present to people, you know, you did this. It was kind of messed up. You know, what do you do? Whatever. You know, because for some reason, there are individuals that have an awareness. They have an awareness to them that allows them to pick up on stuff, to be like, oh, that was kind of messed up. Let's talk about it. Yeah. When other people choose not to have that awareness. So when you're constantly the mature one, or you're constantly the one to have to go to people to try to resolve a situation or bring to their attention that something they did was wrong or was whatever, and that gets very tiring. So there are times where you will choose to mask immaturity as I'm taking care for my own mental health and make decisions that didn't help. You could have handled that differently.
Yeah, and the truth is, we're made up of a flesh and a spirit, right? Yeah. So it's this idea that our flesh does not want to forgive. Our flesh doesn't want to be the person that's always surrendering and always going and always trying to apologize and make amends, while our spirit knows what's right to do, right? That it's like, no, you have to forgive them. No, you have to let that go, right? The flesh says, I want to see vengeance, right? So it's like someone did something wrong to me, and this is where we had the conversation of just like, you know, we want God to either punish them or for them to come to the recognition and the acknowledgement of what they did and tell us, right? I am sorry for doing this. I'm sorry in the way I hurt you. I'm sorry for what I said. I take that back. I never should have said it. I was wrong. That's what we want. That's what our flesh wants, right? Spirit is like, does not need that in order to forgive an individual. So it's this constant battle and clashing between what we want, right, and what we know is right, and what we want to see and what we know is like, that's none of our business, right? If we forgave someone, you should not, and you truly let it go, you should not be worried about what they are doing and if God is kind of coming around to make sure they learn their lesson. But our flesh wants to know that, you know? So it's, again, that battle that we always face with knowing what's right and to do and kind of what's wrong and what's just what we want. Because we want to see it, right? We want to know that you knew what you did was wrong. You messed up. You're missing out on an amazing individual in your life. I was nothing but good to you, right? We want for someone to just acknowledge all of those feelings. And we have to come to terms with the fact that that may not always be the case, right? And I remember just even recently in the last few years, just of, you know, going through different things or whatever, and, you know, having those feelings where it's like, God, like what's happening? Like, I need to know that, you know, this situation that happened, these people, whatever, like that you see what's happening. Because I think a lot of times what we do is we equate it to God is not seeing. He's not aware. So it's like, God, you must not know. Right? Like what's happening. You're not seeing the situation, where again, our flesh is interpreting that God is not seeing, even though we know he sees all things, you know? But again, it's like, it's not your responsibility. It's not your business to, you know, get that full circle moment. Yeah. And if it does happen, amazing, right? But again, there are times where, I know this was even brought up, where we see these individuals, whether it's on social media, right? And it's like they're living their life. And it's like, you know, I wonder in the living of your life that you're having right now, that you remember what you did. Like, I'm wondering, right? And again, we look at people's highlight reel, we look at what they post, and to us, it's like they're living their life, and what they did to me was crazy, and what they did to me, and like, there's no remorse there. There's no this, there's no that. The other side of that is you truly don't know what those individuals are going through. You truly don't know what they're processing, what their journey is looking like. And if you feel that they hurt you and you were in the wrong, they were in the wrong, and they hurt you and abandoned you, and whatever the situation is, and you're waiting for that moment, right? You don't know what God is doing in their life privately. They may not post about it. They may not publicize it. They may not tell a lot of people, but that doesn't mean that God is not dealing with them, right? So I think a lot of times we just have to have that trust in God to know, God, I'm not seeing how you are dealing with these individuals, but I trust that you're dealing with that and you got that and you're taking care of that. It's not our job, right, to worry about that. I think of, the ultimate example of Jesus on the cross, right? In that moment, everybody ridiculing him, everyone talking about him, everyone, basically, condemning him and happy about what's going on, and how he was able to utter the words, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, right? And it's like that moment he's a perfect example of someone that was able to forgive and not like lash out on people while being on the cross, right? He could have easily started like cursing at people, letting people know, and all of these things instead, right? While he's up there, it's like he has someone basically comfort his mom, right? And while he's up there, he saves someone, because one guy is like ridiculing him, and you have this other one that's like, just remember me. And Jesus in that moment could have just focused on the guy ridiculing him. I could just focus on the negative, right? I could focus on this guy over here that's basically telling me to take myself off of this cross if I'm the Son of God and all of these things. And he could have just focused on the negative and not focused on this opportunity that was here. So Jesus, while on the cross, being able to focus on, you know what, I can't believe these people did this to me. I'm the Savior. I'm the Son of God. Look at how they're treating me. Look at this guy on the cross. Isn't even thankful, great, nothing, right? Instead, he chose to look at the opportunity that was on the other side. And there was an opportunity for him in that moment to save someone. And he was able to do it through the hurt, through the pain, through the suffering of what he was enduring. So it's this idea of looking at Jesus as that example where it's like, man, he had the opportunity to lash out on everybody while on that cross, but he chose to forgive, and he chose forgiveness. And it's like, none of us in this world have experienced that much hurt, that much pain to amount to what Jesus went through. And he was still, right, in his 100% humanity and his 100% divinity, able to forgive and forgive individuals that didn't know what they were doing, right? Because it's like, that's the other thing. We want to know that people knew what they were. It's like, I want to know that you know what you're doing. And a lot of times it could be that excuse of like, no, they knew what they were doing. They knew what they said. They knew what they meant by that. And Jesus here is able to say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Obviously the perfect model for us. Again, not easy though. Not easy to do when we feel hurt. But Jesus didn't miss out on that opportunity to save someone, right, up until the point of his death, simply because of what the other thief on the cross was saying. So it's like, even in our life, right, let's not miss out on opportunities because of what someone else is saying, right, who probably is hurt, probably is going through it, probably has experienced their own traumas and things in their life that they can't help it. It's like, there's an opportunity here for a new friendship. There's an opportunity here for a new career, an opportunity here for new experiences. I'm not going to let the negative rob me of this new opportunity. So it's like, I forgive what's happened. I forgive the individuals, but I'm going to deal with the hurt. I'm going to deal with the pain. I'm going to deal with the repercussions of that and how I've changed because of that, And there's an individual in my life who I know, not going to share who, just out of like privacy, but the idea that, I remember growing up, them being a certain way and them being and having certain qualities about themselves and a certain personality and certain characteristics that people loved, that I loved, and all of these things. And just as life went on and certain experiences with certain individuals happened, that began to diminish, and that light began to diminish, and those characteristics and the outgoingness, the energy, the enthusiasm began to diminish, where it was like, this individual then became known to just be more introverted, less outgoing, less joyful, smiling less, laughing less, causing less of just, that vibrance that individual bring to the room. And then I remember where that changed drastically. And it was like he was able to tap back into, right? Now he knows a male. He was able to tap back into certain qualities and, characteristics that was once lost because of experiences, right? And it's like, what did it take? It could have taken a new individual, a new friendship, a new relationship to show, right, a difference. It could have taken just growth and maturity, right, to realize like what happened. It needs to be let go of. I need to leave it in my past. But it's evident when people hold on to things in their life and, you know, they allow circumstances to change them for the worse, you see it.
Yeah.
But how awesome is it to be able to see when things change for the better, when there's forgiveness, when there's a letting go of things, you know, when there's just kind of a relinquishing of hurt and pain, and you have to just deal with it and accept the new and embrace that new opportunity. It is also evident, and there's also a change. So it's like, you know, I think going back to how we started, your wife basically saying, you know, are you more social? Do you consider yourself, whatever the question was, right? I think it's, again, evidence of just other things in your life that you've been able to kind of come to terms with or work on or grow or mature in, where now there's evidence, right, of just like, you know, you seem like a different person, right? You seem like, you know, more qualities or different qualities of you are being, you know, exhibited.
All right. Yeah, and I think that, you know, as a wrap up, you know, we definitely encourage everyone to that feels that way. That feels like, oh, do I want to start making friends, or do I want to start socializing more? Do I want to join a gym and then have to deal with the people that are there, or do I want to join a pottery club? Whatever it is, I would say just do it with no expectations. Don't go into it thinking these are going to be my new besties, or this is going to be my new best friend, or no, don't put that pressure on it. You know, one of the things that I speak to my wife a lot about also is that sometimes you have people in your life who are just I call them your chelcha people. You're people that you just have social fun with. You go out to get coffee, and, you know, you do something fun. You go to eat, whatever. It's not that it's a surface relationship, but it's a surface relationship in the sense that everybody understands we just go out to have fun and de-stress. Nobody's getting personal. The problem is that
the chelcha people don't make a difference for you. So that's where, if you just have chelcha people, right? And I know you're going to get to that. If you just have chelcha people, right? There's still like that longing inside, you know?
Yes, but it's better to have chelcha people and people that you're, and then still waiting to fill the void of people where a really strong personal relationship than have nobody.
Yeah.
You know, because it is through those chelchas, those moments of socializing and meeting people and just like hanging out, that eventually, organically, someone in the group or someone that in the person in the group connected you with somebody else, where you're able then to build that relationship that you're really longing for and needing. But if you're not going out and socializing in general, you know, God is not going to have the person just come randomly knocking on your door.
And even like you said about that couple, you know, again, you didn't see them again.
Yeah.
But it's like you were with them for a few hours. Might as well talk to them and engage with them. Not have the mentality of these people aren't going to be there again. They're not my best friends. I'm going to, you know, not all the time is it, like you said, in pursuit of your lifelong friend. Yeah. You know, and that was the other question we can end on that we talked about. Remember the idea of like people who say like, I've had this friend since childhood, 70, you know, and the idea of like, okay, people have lifelong friends. It's like, man, how does that work? You know, you look back at your life and you just think about like, is there an individual friend that has been there since like childhood or since like 12 or like whatever, you know, and
that you're still in good standing with. Yeah.
You know, we spoke about the idea of like, you know, whether that's possible or not for everyone. When it is possible, when you do have that, cherish it and embrace it. Yeah. You know, or even the lifelong friend of lifelong with a gap of 3 years where stuff happened or whatever, but you were able to overcome that. That's even a strong, you know, testament of itself also. So.
Yeah. I mean, but listen, at the end of the day, just go out there, have fun. Don't be the hermit crab that you feel like is your natural personality. It's not. Yeah. It's not your natural personality. That is a personality that was cultivated through bad experiences, through fears, through sadness, depression, hurt. And it's about time that you rid yourself of that hermit crab shell and just get out there and be the new you.
I was dying because I'm trying to come up with the hermit crab analogy or something. So the thing with the hermit crab is that it gets rid of one shell, right? Just to get right back into another shell.
But that's bigger and has more room.
But it's still
which
just
exhibits growth. But no shell. You were different.
I'm like, how can we use the hermit crab? If you could come up with the hermit crab analogy to explain this, then let us know. But we hope that you enjoyed today's conversation. And again, just thoughts to get you thinking.
Yeah.
Thinking about these things and what areas of your life, do you need to implement these tools, and who do you need to forgive? How, what does forgiveness look like for you? And you know that better than anybody, right? So we just hope that today's conversation has blessed you. So like always, follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram at God Life Culture Podcast. You can watch us on YouTube as well at God Life Culture Podcast. Subscribe, leave a review, leave a rating. We love reading what you guys have to say about our podcast, and we will catch you in our next episode.
Yeah, so thank you once again for tuning into the latest episode of the God Life Culture Podcast. That's God Life Culture. Until next time.
See ya.
Bye.